Lake Lewis does a great job covering the Washington Redskins, the NFL. Also, we'll dive into a little NBA with him for a couple moments. Kind enough to join me on a Thursday. How you been, pal?
Hey, what's going on, Q? Happy holidays.
You too, my friend. Best and my best to your family as always. All right, I was curious. I want to get your take on this regarding the Washington Redskins. We were talking about some of the quarterbacks going forward, and at the end of the day, what are the chances that Kirk Cousins hits the free agent market, and what are the chances that he's going to be back as the quarterback of the Redskins next year?
Well, I mean, this is just my own personal opinion. Been known to be wrong quite a bit, but I think he is going to hit the free agent market, and I don't think he comes back here to the Washington Redskins next year.
So you think they'll be content with a guy like McCoy?
I'm not sure if it's going to be McCoy. I think that they're more than likely going to have to draft a quarterback. The unfortunate side of this is, and obviously I'm not a proponent of losing games, but the Redskins, always pick in that middle teen range. That's just where they've lived over the last decade or so. Not good enough to make the playoffs most of the time, but not bad enough to be one of the top 5 picks. And this year, I think right now, as of today, they'd be picking like 13 or 14. So, and if they were to win against the Broncos, a team that's, literally one win less than they are now, that basically, pushes them further back and pushes Denver further up the chain. So, and they're a team that's looking for a quarterback. So I think the Redskins might be in a position, to take perhaps a Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma or maybe a Lamar Jackson or someone if people think he's a first-round grade, which I do. That's probably where they're going to be looking right now because of the situation. Now, with that said, Q, you have till March 14th, and you want to try to get something done as soon as possible if you are going to do something with Kirk Cousins. This isn't a situation where you can let this drag out, all off season heading into training camp. It wouldn't work that way this time. He needs to know something clearly within the first month or month and a half after the season's done where he's going to be, because obviously he's got to look at different suitors too if he knows the Redskins aren't going to necessarily go after him to keep him here.
Yeah, if you look at that third franchise tag, that would guarantee him right around 34.5 if they
that's impossible.
Yeah. Well, the transition tag, I guess, is a little easier to swallow at 28.8, but it's still a high number. I mean, to me, he's top 15.
A lot of money.
Yeah. The reason I brought up, because we don't know what's going to happen in New York with Eli. We don't know what's going to transpire in Jacksonville with Bortles. We don't know what's going to go on in Kansas City with Alex Smith. So there's probably going to be a lot of movement along with some of these head coaches, which I'm curious. We talked about this before. When you look at the NFL right now, and we're talking about some of these teams that didn't make the playoffs last year, that are going to make the playoffs this year, you can make a case for a lot of these head coaches as coach of the year. But there's a flip side to that. You look at guys, you look at what's going on in Tampa with Cutter. And I'm curious, because you did radio in Florida for a lot of years. I almost get the sense, watching that game the other night, that because they were honoring Gruden and he was waxing poetic about Winston, I've stood firm on this for years, but now after listening to that and going back and really reading in that, it almost seems as though he's itching so much, even though he makes a ton of money with ESPN, to get back to coaching. And it almost seems like it's inevitable that, if anything, Tampa Bay would throw a boatload of money at him if they fired Dirk Cutter.
I don't think so. And I'm the guy that was. I don't want to say I was wrong, but I'm the guy that obviously reported that he had been close to signing with University of Miami years ago, and so that was the closest he really had ever come to that. Signing something. I think he's comfortable in the role he is now. I do think that if there were a team that would be out there that may fit, the things that he's possibly looking for, that could be one of those outfits again. He had success there. He won a Super Bowl there. And they've got young talent. They've got pieces in place. They've just had a disastrous year.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's leaving the booth for that. I just think the Buccaneers are going to go in a different direction. They're probably going to get rid of their coach.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to leave, but I can see him being intrigued by a ton of money. It's just he was and I know he really waxes poetic about quarterbacks, but he was really waxing poetic about Jameis Winston, and I was just trying to draw those parallels. His name always comes up, though. We know that, right? Him and Bill Cowher.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there when people were talking about him to Tennessee, I was like, that's absolutely ridiculous. There's no way. I mean, it has to be a good situation for him. I mean, heck, you might hear his name surface in New York.
No way. No way. No, too much of a control freak. No way. Nope.
But that's what I'm saying. Like
But I know what you're saying.
His name's going to be synonymous with big market teams. I mean, I think that's what you're going to see naturally. People start talking about that. Heck, I could even foresee one day if his brother wasn't here, people might say, are they going to try to get his big brother? No, they're not. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of movement. This is probably one of the first years, though, Q, in a long time where it's just a lot of ifs. A lot of
yes.
movement that's going to happen.
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty that you can't predict. You don't know where all these quarterbacks are going to end up. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if the majority of these free agent quarterbacks actually re-sign with the teams where they currently are, meaning Keenum, meaning Bortles, meaning Eli.
But do you think that's a
chance Kirk could?
But do you think, I don't mean to cut you off, do you think that's more of an indictment on the potential quarterbacks coming out of college? And there's not that next generational guy, or at least to a lot of pundits, maybe it's not a strong class, and we don't know who's going to come out and who's not.
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, that's a great point. There's 3 or 4 quarterbacks that I think are pro quarterbacks, but are they elite pro quarterbacks? The thing I've been getting tired of hearing about is, Josh Allen and how, Carson Wentz has helped his cause. And, yeah, he did, I'm sure, as far as looking at a small school like a Wyoming, and then obviously went to North Dakota or something. So, I mean, I get that. But that's doing a disservice to Wentz. I mean, he's a freaky talented guy, and don't discredit his own skill sets and say that he's helping other small college guys. No, I think Josh Allen's a good quarterback. He's not a Carson Wentz, no way whatsoever. If that's the guy that you're looking at now and as a top 10 pick, then yeah, you're gonna look at some other pro quarterbacks, some other free agents, and a guy like Bortles now, because of the way he's played over this past month, one of the hottest quarterbacks, if not the hottest quarterback in the NFL. I'm thinking Jacksonville is going to have to look at that situation differently, because you and I both know that's a dangerous team come playoff time. They get in the playoffs and
the defense run the football.
They're like tailor-made to beat Pittsburgh. I mean, their style of play is tailor-made to get them. Maybe not New England, but Pittsburgh, yes. If they were to do something like that, which I'm not predicting they would, but if they did, you have to go into this offseason thinking maybe Bortles has finally found it and it's consistent and we're winning. We just need to sign him and go back to him next year.
Let's. I know I got you for a couple more minutes before we hit the 54 break. I want to switch gears and get your thoughts on the NBA and the last several days, and really the last several weeks or so. The Sixers have not played very good basketball, and I know many will come out and defend the fact that, well, if Embiid's not on the floor, listen, that's basketball 101. We already get it. But the bottom line is it's inexcusable to lose to teams like Chicago and Sacramento. And listen, if people don't see that, then that's their own problem. I can't sway them either way. The other day I had the discussion that eventually it does fall on the head coach. And the fact that you have a kid in Simmons that hasn't need to develop an 8 to 10 to 12 to foot 15 jumper. They're babying Markelle Fultz. They're going to play Embiid against the Knicks because that's a nationally televised game. So it always seems as though, when you think they're starting to get it, they kind of revert back to the nonsense. And a lot of the fan base that I'm dealing with, they're getting pretty frustrated and tired with it. Now, I'm just wondering, I believe they have a right to, and some can stay on board. But I think at the end of the day, when do you start to look at how it's constructed internally with Colangelo and then Brown, who's a nice guy, but maybe at the end of the day is not the right coach going forward? I don't advocate for firings, but I'm saying in our market, in this area, you're not allowed to criticize Brown. You can rip the other coaches, but you can't criticize Brown.
Right. Yeah, I think from afar, I see a young team that, let's just call it what it is. They weren't as good as what maybe they thought they were earlier in the year. I mean, it's the NBA. Teams don't even start playing really until Christmas.
Yes.
And it's a young basketball team. It's a young basketball team that doesn't have all their pieces in place, too. And I agree with you. Why draft Fultz number one, trade up to get him, and not play him? I understand he's coming back from, I guess, a shoulder injury. But a number one pick is supposed to be on the floor getting 30 minutes a game. Just look at the other two guys on the floor, number one picks. I mean, there's a reason why they're on the floor. And I think if you're Philadelphia, you know, from afar again, you look at that team and you say they have just a scary amount of young talent. Covington's a great pro, in my opinion. Borderline all-star type player. Probably won't get there because he's got other things around him, but I think he's that good. And then you have the young guy. I can't think of his name. The young big off the bench.
Well, you got Dario, but let me ask you something though. But the turnovers late and not closing out bad teams. I mean, you can say young all you want, but doesn't criticism also have to sometimes lie at the feet of the coach?
Of course it does, but you know what that team's lacking, and it's quite apparent.
Well, they need another scorer, another player.
Yeah, they need another scorer, but they don't have a dominant point guard. That's just what they don't have. And if Fultz was picked to be that guy, I've always questioned, is he a point guard? He's a two guard. And, you know, I like the kid. What is it, McConnell or whatever? I mean, you know, he tough, gritty player, but let's call it what it is. You know, he's not a floor general.
Yeah, but if Simmons, but here's the thing: if Simmons creates his shot, if he learns to shoot, then that's going to open up everything.
A lot.
Yeah, of course it does. There's a reluctance for him to shoot.
But is he a leader? And that's the question.
That's yet to be seen.
Yeah, people have to ask that question. This team is devoid of leadership. And Covington, like I said, a good player, but that's not the guy you want to be your leader. Maybe he's the guy that leads by example because he plays hard. I get that. I think Embiid has the personality to become that down the road. But right now, you think about it. If you put an upper echelon point guard on this team, I mean, imagine if Kyrie had gone to Philadelphia or Chris Paul had signed with Philadelphia, you'd see a whole different makeup. And I do think that right now that's what they're missing. They're just missing a true floor general that's a leader that could get.
They were banking on Simmons. They were banking on Simmons. But the problem is every time he goes into distributes or he drives into paint, right away he doesn't want that shot. And you know this, to be a great scorer in the NBA,
he doesn't even.
No, you got to get to the line too. No,
he doesn't look for his shot, and that's definitely something that he's going to have to work on because teams are starting to figure that out too. You know, they're sagging off of him now and daring him to shoot.
Yep.
He's not living in the paint as much as he used to when the season first started. And you know, the league's about adjustments. These veteran teams and coaches will figure things out quickly, and that's where I agree with you. I need to see Brett Brown do a little bit more now. I mean, we know Philly's a young, talented team. We know they've got a lot of pieces in place. If that team doesn't make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference this year, that's a huge disappointment. There's no reason for them to not be in playoff contention if the season ended today. And yes, I know it's early, it's not Christmas yet, but if the season ended today, they're out of the playoffs. And with that talent in the East, there's no reason for that.
Nope, I agree 100%. All right, my friend, I'm a little tight. Listen, have a great holiday. We will talk next week, get into a little more NBA, a little more NFL. Always appreciate it, pal.
All right, take care, my friend. Appreciate it.
You got it. Lake Lewis covers Redskins Wire, USA Today, also covers the NBA, does a lot of stuff with the Wizards down there in D.C., so always a good take.